Good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to welcome you to this afternoon's launch of the SCSI Women in Surveying Mentoring and Leadership Development Programme, and of course to wish you all a very happy International Women's Day. This important day and this year's theme of Choose to Challenge is an opportunity for us to highlight the role that we all have to play in improving gender balance in the construction, land and property industry. To achieve gender parity, we must ensure that we are all choosing to challenge the common barriers to career progression faced by women in the workplace, including issues of confidence and self-belief, gender stereotyping and bias, and the assumptions that are often made about women's career ambitions when considering promotional opportunities. Our mentoring and leadership development programme aims to assist female surveyors to overcome these barriers, both through the leadership development modules and through the advice, guidance and support of mentors from across the extensive network of the SCSI membership. As part of our wider equality, diversity and inclusion strategy, this programme aims to start an open conversation within industry on how we can work together to achieve greater gender balance at all levels in the industry. If we take today's theme then of choosing to challenge a little step further, as women, we also need to challenge ourselves and take control of our own careers. We know that when women take control, we can achieve so much. But we don't become successful alone. We need the support of our family, our friends, our colleagues and our peers. And that is what this programme is all about, connecting female surveyors with colleagues across the industry that can mentor, advise, nurture, and even just provide a listening ear. So I would encourage anyone considering applying to be a mentee, whether you're just starting out in your surveying career or considering the next step, or are looking at re-entering the profession after some time out, choose to challenge yourself. I guarantee you won't regret it. So to the running order for today, I will shortly hand you over to SCSI President Micheál Mahon, who will make a few introductory comments. Micheál will then be followed by our special guest, Patricia Power, who will talk to us about her career to date. Patricia will then be followed by a panel discussion and Q&A. And finally, I will close the event with detail on how to apply to the programme. So without further ado, if I can invite Micheál, please, to take the floor.
Thank you, Shirley. I've always wanted to speak at an event like this, but as a 50-something-year-old white, country-based, practicing Catholic, GA obsessive, I get that I don't exactly often fit the bill as a must-have speech or a speaker at an International Women's Day event. But, you know, maybe what I'm going to tell you will surprise or give some food for thought in terms of perception of some demographics. So I'm going to just spend take a couple of minutes with my personal journey in terms of female equality, because it's a personal topic and it's one I'm passionate about, and I'll tell you why. I was born in County Wexford to my father was a small builder, mother was a primary school teacher. But here's the thing, back then there was no paid maternity leave for teachers. So not only did my mother lose her salary during her period of time, it took her, I use inverted commas on that, to have me and my 5 siblings. She also had to pay for the substitute teachers' wages for the period she was out. Accordingly, all of her children were planned to arrive around summer or Christmas holidays. So we've May, June, September, January and October. And October was an outlier because she was a month late. She's still been an outlier, the same girl, but a month late. So as devout Catholics, and obviously in late 60s, early 70s Ireland, there was no such thing as organised family planning. So I don't need to say any more about the regime that pertained for women in Ireland then. It was unbelievable stuff. But not only did my mother break the mold or do this, she subsequently broke the mold in becoming one of the first national school principals. Again, this was done despite, let's just say, some really, really stupid questions in the interview process. So I have 3 younger sisters, all of whom, because of their upbringing, they're all hugely different, but again, are examples of the embodiment of strong women. I went to a primary school where it was 50-50 male-female, and subsequently went to a secondary school, which was actually a convent. We had boarders, female boarders living in the school at the time. The ratio here was 3-to-1 female to male. And here I met some of the most brilliant women in terms of students and teachers, and many of whom are still friends to this day. And to cut religious orders from slack, I'd say 2 of the most influential people in my life back then were 2 non-teachers we had at the time, and again, who were wonderful women despite the church teachings and male-dominated society at the time in the 1980s. So that's the scene for the 1980s, and Ivan is going to come back to it, I think. But I subsequently went to Waterford Regional Technical College to the construction department after my leaving. And you know, it's frequently said that women find it hard to adjust to a male-dominated construction sector, construction course. And I totally get that, because I have to say, after 5 years of schooling in a convent, I found it hard to adjust myself, never mind the 4 or 5 girls within our group of 30 plus students. But you know, as I've journeyed through life and my surveying career and my voluntary careers in SCSI, GA, schools, boards of management, chambers of commerce, etc., I've been very lucky that for most of my years, somehow, I've been interacting with female peers or colleagues in whatever capacity. I call out today Claire Solan, Joanna Gill, and my current bestie and CEO, Shirley, as huge influences on my SCSI career. I collaborated closely with Claire when she was president and I was chair of the QS group to start the housing reports 6 years ago, and up to last week we were still collaborating on the apartment study. I witnessed firsthand how Joanna led the board during a period of having no CEO, and well, Shirley, as for Shirley, she's just trying to kill me before I get to the AGM, but that's another story. So in my personal life, I've been very lucky to marry Trudy 20 years ago this year, who somehow manages her career in PwC, and particularly in this, my presidential year, manages with our kids, in particular, 3 of them teenagers. So look, for me, the journey through life, I've had a head start in the terms of women's lib, for to use that horrible phrase, because I was oblivious to it and unconsciously lived it from day one. But why am I saying this? I'm not looking for any credit as being some sort of an enlightened country boy. No, quite simply, I wanted to take this opportunity, because I don't get it frequently in this forum, to relay from this man's perspective the following. Women's equality must be mainstream, full stop. We have and are making huge progress. The current generation are standing on the shoulders of giants who could not have foreseen the progress we've made, but there is more to do. In my opinion, we must be strategic in how we progress, and to me that involves arming ourselves with statistics and facts to rebut some of the nonsense, choose our battles, choose our speakers, choose our representatives, and that includes men. Finally, I would say this: we have to recognize that as long as there are women and men on this planet, there will be rivalry and competition between us. Sometimes nasty, sometimes banter. Women and men banter is as natural to me with my close female friends as, say, Kilkenny and Wexford, or in soccer, Man United and Liverpool, or something like that. But we have to recognize when we engage, what form of engagement it is. As Shirley said to me recently, we were discussing this, it's all about context, and that goes for men and women. So that's me, that's my journey. We're not finished yet. There's a huge amount of work to do, but I was really thrilled to read the Business Post interviews yesterday, some of whom I know are at the meeting with us, that they're so positively disposed to our industry, and in particular campaigning to include more women in the construction side of our industry in particular. So apologies for going over the time. I would now like to introduce Patricia Power. I suppose it's fair to say she needs no introduction to you all, as you've had her in your sitting room over the past number of years, where she's best known for her direct, no-nonsense approach to costs, while also endeavouring to achieve quality. I have to say, as an anecdote, that whenever we discuss getting something done at home where it might be a bit costly, it's occasionally commented to me, Jesus, you're worse than that Patricia Power one on the telly. So with that, I will hand over to you, Patricia.
Thank you very much, Micheál. That was lovely. Good afternoon, everybody. Firstly, I'd like to say how nice it is to be asked to talk today. I'm really honoured and proud to be a female QS. Having worked successfully in the surveying part of the construction sector for 23 working years, and even more proud to say it's my 10-year anniversary of my own working PQS practice, which I set up in March 2011. So being able to talk here today makes that even more special. I just want to go back to my college years, because that to me is where my career started. I started college at the very young age of 17. I knew I liked the construction property sector, but I was unsure of the exact course that was for me. There was a selection of courses I could have done in DIT Bolton Street, but by default, I actually started studying geomatic surveying, which was a 3-year diploma course. I did 2 years of the course. I did like the course, but I found working outside the actual land surveying part of it in King's Inn, I found it tough. I stayed on the course, I completed the 2 years, and I got my cert and got my certificate with merit. I returned that September to start my year 3 of the course, and I just knew it wasn't for me. I wasn't going to work in it. So I went and I met with the head of the construction department, Bernard Skeleton, who himself was a QS. And we spoke about construction and all the different areas and what I could do and what my options were. And on his advice and in my interest, and with the permission of the college, I joined the 4-year full-time construction economics course. So I went back to first year. Due to my certificate, though, I had a few exemptions from first year. So I really didn't spend that much time in college. I had 3 days a week, so I had 2 days off. So I decided to get work experience in a PQS office. So my first job ever was with Boyle Project Management. I was mainly working on the reception. I was answering phones, I was typing, I was doing maths checks, I was doing bills, but it was vital inside experience. Sorry, guys. I worked with Boyle Project Management then for 2 days a week. I was working in the reception, I was answering the phones, I was typing, I was doing a lot of kind of general background stuff, but it was vital insight experience into a course that I just started. It gave me great comfort in knowing I would enjoy working in this type of environment. It was a little bit scary as well, as there was so much to learn, the technical information, the language, the details, the skills, but it was an all good round introduction to the QS world. It was amazing to get this experience, as I found a slight disadvantage of being female. When looking for the summer work when I was studying in college, I wasn't able to gain the same experience of my male classmates. They were able to labour, block lay, paint. They were able to assist on sites during the summer, which gave them great insight into construction and the actual physical building. I was always very, very jealous of this. But not to complain, I did have some good summers abroad and did enjoy my time. So after I just completed year 3 of the degree course, I wanted to get some solid office-based experience. So I got a job with Healy Kelly. I remember being allocated again to a desk. I got my own PC. I thought this was amazing. I did a lot of background stuff like checking bills, maths checking, etc. I remember teaching myself the core PC programs, doing Excel, Word, Master Build, and just practicing and messing about on the computer. But it gave me great computer skills. And I suppose it was just great teaching and skill at a very, very young age. I thoroughly enjoyed the construction economics course and always found the lecturers very dedicated. I had Alan Hoare as my mentor in my final year, and always felt his door was open. And if he could give me time and advice in any possible way, he did. This open door and help was very much across the board and how I experienced my college years in DIT. When I graduated from college, I must say after 6 years, I did secure a job with PKS prior to completing my final exams. In PKS, I worked closely with Donna O'Shaughnessy, Deirdre Chapman and Paul Mitchell. I was in a small office for 2. I learned directly from team leader Paul Mitchell for the 18 months I spent there. It was an incredible learning experience. After 6 years in college, I was ready to work and earn some real money. So anything new, I soaked right up. I always say I learned from one of the best in Paul Mitchell. There was great support, great structures in place in PKS, and that initial core training and mentoring has stood to me over the time. I thrived and I loved the office vibe. There was about 20 staff in total, so it was a lovely size to fit in and get to know everybody. I was very impressed also that Deirdre Chapman, a female associate director at the time, that gave me great hope and inspiration to follow along those lines. But after 18 months, I left PKS as I felt a smaller firm would help me move up the ranks a bit quicker. So I moved to work with O'Byrne Jenkins. I went straight in as a project QS, working directly under both partners. This was the start of the Celtic Tiger. Work was plentiful and growing at a rapid pace. So within 6 years of leaving college, I was made a partner in O'Byrne Jenkins at the age of 28. Then I went on to set up their Ashburn office and manage it. I had a team of 10 surveyors working with me in Ashburn. The practice did a lot of mixed-use development, providing the role of quantity surveying and project management. It was a great all-round experience of the varying roles in the different retail, residential and commercial sectors, and overall amazing advancement and opportunities. I was always very promotional in hiring of the female QS staff, which would have been noted at the time by the male QSs. So at one stage in O'Byrne Jenkins, over 20% of the QSs within the firm were female, which is amazing. Considering if I look back at my college years, would have been 4 in 40 would have been female. So that's 10%. Then recession began and it hit quick and it hit hard. I personally at that time was in and out on maternity leave as my family was expanding and things in the office were constantly being tightened up. The policy in the office became a no-hire policy. In 2010, we were down to a core staff of 8, of which 4 were partners, which included me. So it was during this time that I was approached by Room to Improve, the production company for Coca Television. The show had been running for 5 years. It was a 30-minute slot. They were looking at extending the show to 60 minutes, so they needed another body. And as the show had developed a name for cost overruns, they were interested in taking on a QS to co-present the show, i.e. Cost Control Dermot, and help fill the 60-minute slot. I did 2 interviews and I did a screen test on camera with Dermot, and we hit it off from day one. I was honoured to have been picked and chosen, yet I was worried and anxious of what it would involve. How would I come across on TV? Making sure I maintained my ethics, my guidelines, my core training, and the TV wouldn't dilute this. I wouldn't come across silly or I wouldn't be embarrassed. It was an amazing opportunity. I grabbed it with both hands. It was a new adventure for me altogether. I was using my skills that I was qualified for, yet in a very open, public way. Now I had to consider how I spoke, how I looked, how I came across on camera, whilst I was still doing my core QS role. I would have received great support from Dermot in the very early days of the filming, as it was geared towards ensuring the audience understood the technical language we used. Advice was generally, Patricia, keep it simple. You don't want to lose the audience. As Dermot used to say to me, explain it like you're talking to your granny. Other advice was, be yourself, because if you're false, it will come across very clear on the camera. This was an amazing opportunity, as I said. It led me into other media areas outside the show. Just before a new series would be aired, there would have been radio, TV, magazine, newspaper interviews, and show promotional work. In total, I did a series of 5 shows over a period of 6 years. As the years progressed, the projects got bigger in value, took more time to build, just more of my QS time. So towards the end, I felt the show was taking from my private clients. So I made the decision in 2016 to step back from the show and focus on my private practice. I am now 10 years running my own practice, which specializes in bespoke residential new builds, extensions, and refurbishments. I love what I do and feel very lucky for the job that I've chosen. I really enjoy it and love the flexibility of being my own boss. And I'm still, and probably always will be, trying to get the work-life balance right. I hope you've enjoyed my story and will experience the same goodwill, support, and mentorship which has assisted me along my way. Thank you very much for listening, and now I'll hand you back to Shirley.
Thank you for that, Patricia. That was great. I'm going to hand over to the panelists now, and I'll just introduce each of them. So our first panelist is Joanna Gill. So Joanna is the immediate past president of SCSI and is also a director in the valuation and advisory team in Cushman & Wakefield, where she runs the fund valuation area of the business. Joanna is heavily involved with the graduate training programme with Cushman & Wakefield and has supported and encouraged many of her colleagues throughout her career. Joanna will then hand over to our second panellist, Ivan Gain from Sherry Fitzgerald, who has considerable experience within the property industry and manages a great team of property professionals across Ireland. The team works to build long-term partnerships with developer and non-developer clients to develop tailored solutions to achieve clients' risk-return objectives by providing strategy advice, portfolio management and transaction services across new homes and residential investment sectors. Our final panellist then today is Bernadette Morrissey, Chair of the YSCSI Committee, who organise a range of events for our younger members and provide a voice for students, graduates and younger surveyors within the society. Bernadette works in PJ Hegarty as a chartered quantity surveyor and has been an active member for over 4 years. So I'll hand over to Joanna, please.
Great, thanks a million, Shirley. And Patricia, thanks so much for your time. It was great to get some insight into your personal journey. As we said when we were talking last week, everyone thinks they know you so well because you've been in their living rooms, but it's lovely to hear some of your personal journey as well, so thanks for that. This time last year, we did an International Women's Day event in Merrion Square. It was one of the last, if not the last, official event that we held in real life in Merrion Square. And it does feel like a lifetime ago, it has to be said. Shirley and I had been discussing at the time initiatives that we were, she had settled in as the CEO. I was coming to the end of my presidency and we were looking at various different initiatives that we would hope to put in place. Anyway, what were we to know how the next few months and indeed year was to turn out? So I really am so pleased to be here now that we're launching the mentoring programme. So from my perspective, I've had no official mentors throughout my career, but there are lots of people who I would classify as mentors, lots of people I have been inspired by, and lots of people I have learned from. Some of whom probably, won't even remember me in terms of how I passed through their lives, their career over my period. But I suppose the first one I probably would want to start with and acknowledge, and who I hope he does know how much of an important mentor he was, and indeed we are still in touch, was my boss's boss when I started working in Birmingham. His name was Simon Russell, and he headed up the Birmingham office. And he had huge amounts of knowledge. I mean, I was blown away by it. I mean, I was only starting new as a graduate, so everybody knew more than I did. But even in that context, and when I look back now, even in terms of how much knowledge he had, he was an amazing gentleman. And I used to assist on some rent review negotiations and work with him. And he used to call me into his office, and he'd be ringing the other side, and I'd get one side of the story, one side of the conversation. Obviously, we didn't have speakerphones and stuff like that. And I remember one of the other grads saying to me, "God, what a waste of time! You're sitting in Simon's office listening to just one side of the conversation." But actually, I learned an awful lot because Simon took the time to explain why he was doing what he was doing, why he was taking the negotiation stance that he was, and after the calls he would explain what the other side had said, think about, what the next step would be. So, he was really invested in me and my training, and he wanted me to learn, and he wanted me to be successful, and it was a fantastic start to my career. And I would say to all of you, be open to how and where you can learn and absorb absolutely everything that you can, that you get an opportunity. And one thing that Simon told me was, make sure you ask questions. He said there's no such thing as a silly question unless you're asking the same question twice. And that is something that I have repeated to many people. Some of you on this call who I've worked with in the past would have heard me say that. And it really is relevant for us, regardless of what stage we're at in our careers, to be honest with you. Someone else who told me to ask questions was a woman called Claire. And I say woman, and woman is the terminology that I do use when I'm referring to females in a work environment, but it just doesn't sit right with me sometimes. She was a girl, I was a girl. We both probably still think we are girls, but that's another story. But I was working in London as a senior surveyor, and she was an associate director. Now, I wasn't working directly with her, but she was in the wider department. And one evening, there was a few of us out for a few drinks, getting to know each other, and she sort of was asking me how I was getting on, and she said to me, make sure you ask questions, be inquisitive, try to figure things out, and it really resonated with me. And, I suppose following my experience with Simon, it's something that I do still stand by, and I would encourage people, to learn and develop. Claire is one of my best friends now and has helped me and guided me through a lot of decisions in my career as my career progressed. And I suppose she's very good at being objective, and that's something that you do need to be careful with in terms of the blurred line that sometimes emerges between friendship and mentorship. So it doesn't work for all friendships. Be very careful with it. If you're using a friend as a mentor, they need to be able to stand up to you and tell you that you're wrong, or that you need to cop on, or you need to get over yourself. It can't just be a blind, friendship following that you're experiencing. And it's not right for all friendships. So do be careful that you don't ruin a friendship by trying to use it in a kind of mentorship scenario. The final point I would like to make is that I've been lucky and worked hard. They say, the harder you work, the luckier you are, and I definitely would agree with that. But I have been lucky and worked hard at seeking out and surrounding myself with people who challenge me and inspire me, to step up. And the stepping up thing is something that women are not so great at. You need to be proactive. You need to put yourself forward. Many of you will have heard the studies about women who will go for a job only if they can do absolutely everything that's in, the job advertisement. Whereas men will go if they can do about 40% of it. If you haven't heard about those studies, Google it. They're very interesting. Even as recently as a week or so ago, Sinead Bryan from Vodafone was in the Business Post talking about that exact concept. So it is a real thing. It may sound surprising to people, but it is a real thing. And I suppose that sort of stepping up piece, is something that I would have had very strongly from my mum and my sister growing up, who were great support and mentors to me. Various of my college friends, people within Cushman & Wakefield, people within the SCSI, the wider profession, both male and female, who have certainly been good mentors to me over the period of time and would challenge me. You know, it is about choosing to challenge, which is very appropriate for this year's topic. You know, it's feel the fear, do it anyway. You know, you have to do it in the knowledge that, you know, it's not all going to work out, you know, but you learn from stuff that doesn't, you dust yourself off, you start again, you know, and you'll be able to back yourself again the next time. So having people around you with that attitude and who will support you and challenge you to do that is hugely beneficial, and I would certainly recommend that you do seek those type of people out because they will have a big influence on you. So on that note, I'm a little bit over time, sorry about that, but I'm going to hand you over to Ivan. And I've worked with Ivan in the past when we were part of Sherry Fitz Group, and when we met the other week, there was a bit of debate around whether or not Ivan was going to make reference to an old Sherry Fitz ad campaign, marketing campaign. So I'm looking forward to finding out what the outcome was. I would hope you're doing it now. You're going to have to mention it anyway. So over to you.
Thanks so much, Johanna. It was that was great. Great to hear from you, and you really have been an inspiration taking up that the presidency and the society. And it was a pleasure working with you as directors at DDZ and Cushman's over those years. So it's more power to you as well. I'm delighted to be here in my office, but it's a strange time. But I was delighted to get Shirley's call and thank you for the opportunity. A little bit like Micheál, I just want to kind of acknowledge the resilience of women, and I think particularly in the last 12 months, and I wouldn't be here only for my wonderful wife and indeed my mother-in-law, particularly in the last 12 months, and creating that bubble and support with all the juggles and trials and tribulations of life. So and I suppose similar to Micheál as well, my mother had a big role to play in my life, and when you think back around to the 80s and 90s, at one point she was chairperson of the Irish GP Wives Association. So even the fact that there was an Irish GP Wives Association as a representative group in its own right is just extraordinary. So there has been a lot of progress, a lot of change. So jump into the 80s, and I'm choosing to take the challenge. And this is something that Mark Fitzgerald was involved with in April 1989. So this is a campaign that ran 32 years ago. And I suppose when you think about that, Bono was only a boy. He was the voice of the year. Charlie Haughey was Taoiseach. George Bush was president, and Margaret Thatcher was celebrating her 10 years as a prime minister. And I was about to turn 10. But this is a campaign. I'm gonna flick it on now in a moment, but we do need to read the small print, so bear with me. So this was, when you think of that environment to that stage, this was our ad looking for the fairer sex and recruiting agents in terms of what we wanted to see. And I will just bear with me, but I think it's worth reading in terms of the narrative. You would change and update the language somewhat, but I think a lot of the sentiment is as strong today as it was 32 years ago. So in most state agents, the staff ratio tends to be 3 to 1 in favor of men. At Sherry Fitzgerald, the ratio is 2 to 1 in favor of women. It's not that we discriminate in favor of women. We simply found that our female agents have a better feel for the residential market. They're more anxious to find just the right house for the prospective buyer. They're more sensitive to the needs of the seller. They understand the emotions and regrets attached to the selling of the home and the nuances and subtleties that come into play when one is buying a home. And while they're eminently practical and pragmatic, they can also recognize and accept the most mystical element that is present when a buyer knows that a particular house is home. Some companies make it a policy to employ women. They hope it will reflect well on them, show that they're in tune with the times, they're innovative and farsighted. At Sherry Fitz, our policy is to employ the best people. At the moment, 2 out of those 3 happen to be women. I suppose the point of sharing that is really around culture and I suppose a better balance within teams. And within Sherry Fitzgerald today, we haven't quite held up that ratio, but we are 59% female, 41% male. My own team is about 52 female, 48% female. My top 2 agents are both female. And I've had good, amazing mentors, both male and female over the years. But obviously I would work very closely with Marion Finnegan, who's not as a fair, but originally an economist, but she's I'm probably robbing her being a Batman. So it's, I think that cultural piece and the relationship you create across a squad and like recognizing those different skills is really, really important. Finally, I just wish to wish someone a happy birthday. Marguerite Boyle is one of our senior directors within the New Homes team. She's out on maternity leave at the moment, but today is her birthday. I think she's tuned in, so just to wish Marguerite a happy birthday as well. And thanks to all my wonderful female colleagues. And thanks to me for having me. I'll hand over to Bernadette now.
Thanks, Ivan. Thanks for having me today. I'm really happy to be here, and happy International Women's Day to all of you. I'll just give you a bit of background. I'm a quantity surveyor, as Shirley mentioned, and I work for PJ Hegarty's. But I suppose similarly to Patricia, it wasn't quite a straight route to get there. I had a part-time job through school and college in a quarry of all places. So I never really intended to end up in the construction industry, but probably subconsciously always would. So the CAO came along and I thought, right, I'm going to keep my options open, and I went for a commerce degree, and we got to year 3 of commerce, and all my friends were doing or applying for masters in accountancy, and no disrespect to accountants. I just knew that wasn't a life for me. But it was my favorite subject in school and in college. So I said, right, how do I marry my interest in construction by way of my part-time job and my interest in business and accountancy and maths? So a quick Google search, and 2 words appeared in front of me, which were quantity surveyor. At that stage I was 21 and had never heard of the term quantity surveyor before. What was it? What did it mean? What does it do? And so I looked into it a bit more. What are my options? How do I get into this? But it seemed like the right fit. The business side, the math side, the accountancy, like undoubtedly always fascinated by the built environment, probably by way of my part-time job. So I had 2 options really to convert into quantity surveying. One was to do a master's in what was then DIT, now TUD, which would have been a 2-year part-time course, or the other option was a full-time course in Nottingham Trent University. And I was kind of ready to spread the wings a little bit and explore. So off I went with my bags packed to Nottingham, and I did a conversion course into quantity surveying. And to be honest, when I got there, I still didn't really know what it was or what I was getting myself into. But certainly one of the better decisions I've made. So fast forward to say 9 months into the master's degree, and we were offered an option to either do a 20,000 word dissertation or a 10,000 word dissertation with a project, a work-based project. So if anyone knows me, they'll know I'm more practical application rather than theoretical application. So I jumped at the opportunity to do the 10,000 words. Maybe it was a decision driven by laziness, but that's just the way it is. So I moved down to London to do my work placement for my dissertation, and what was to be a 3-month stint turned into a 2-year stint. And by no choice of my own, I was landed into the J. Murphy & Sons tunnelling division in Kentish Town in London. And one of my first weeks on the project involved being dropped down safely, of course, an intermediate tunnel shaft 30 metres beneath the ground of London City. And interestingly enough, at no point did anyone ever say to me, "You're a girl, you can't do this." It was always like, "Oh, this is cool. Yeah, none of us have seen this before." So throughout my time in London, I got to work on some pretty big projects with Murphy's. One was Crossrail C310, which was an extension to a tube line. And then the other one was a UK Power Networks cable tunnel. And then 2 years into my stint in London, came time to come home. So I was very fortunate to be offered a position with PJ Hegarty & Sons, and I've been with them since. And I have to say, I've landed on my feet in terms of the projects I've got to work on. I've got to work all around the city on jobs for, we did a maintenance contract, or Hegarty's have a maintenance contract with the OPW. So I've been in some pretty impressive buildings throughout the city. To name a few would be Leinster House, Green Street Courthouse, one of my favourite days on the job was I got to go down to Baldonnel airfield and have a look. I didn't go down to look in the helicopters, but I got to look in the helicopters, so that was a nice surprise. I got moved on to ESB Project Fitzwilliam then, which is a job that Hegarty's have to redevelop the ESB headquarters just up the road from Marion Square. Very interesting project, a lot of challenges, extremely difficult project, but they're nearly there now with that, and it's exceptionally impressive. So if anyone's around the city centre, if it's within your 5K, it's not quite there yet, but once it's finished, it will be extremely impressive as a building. And my present role is based in County Kildare for a multinational American company who's building a manufacturing facility. So, and I have to say, I suppose at every stage of my career, the choices I've made, I've been very fortunate to have not necessarily a mentor, but a support system. And, you know, I've been really lucky to have a cheerleader of some sort in my corner all the time, and be it in the way of my personal life, my mom, my sisters, my friends, or my professional life, in the way of my managers. Like, I think it's safe to say the only reason I went for my chartership is because my mom just kept asking me to do it, and I thought the easiest way to get her to stop asking me was just to do it. Now she, like, what I didn't realize at the time was she could see the bigger picture. And I think often when we're caught up in the day to day, and, you know, particularly at the early stages of your career, you're focused on, right, I need to put one foot in front of the other, don't mess up, and just keep the head down and work hard. And it's often hard when you're in that situation to see the wood from the trees, I suppose. And in that situation, she could see, right, a chartership will benefit her. Just keep an eye on her until she does it. So I think Joanna touched on the point. It's not always going to be roses and rainbows. Like, a mentor, no matter what form that comes in, will challenge you and objectively, you know, rate your performance and give you constructive criticism. And, you know, it is hard, as I said, to see the wood from the trees at times, but the mentor, and the idea of a mentor for me is someone that can see, you know, paths and, you know, routes for your career that you might not be able to see because you're so busy working hard and trying to get ahead. And that outside view and that outside opinion and that additional experience into your career can make such a huge difference to anyone's career. Another point that we kind of touched on just with previous speakers is I think as women, we are far more prone to self-doubt and self-criticism. So like the importance of having someone in your corner that gives you the constructive criticism, but also reminds you that you're doing a good job and you're making a valuable contribution. It really makes a huge difference to reinforcing your passion and your drive into your career. It's like, I'm working this hard and it is going to make a difference. And here's a way where I can make a bigger difference if I take a specific route, or if I, you know, turn left instead of turn right. And oftentimes we can't see that ourselves, so that there is the benefit of the mentor. And like, it's safe to say, like, I'm a huge advocate of everything that the SCSI is doing with equality and diversity. And I really have no doubt that this mentoring program will offer women in the industry just that push or that step that, you know, that we need to make a big difference and to push our careers on to where they need to be. So on that note, I'll hand back to Shirley. Thank you very much.
Thanks a million, Bernadette, and to all of our panelists, Ivan and Joanna, and of course to Patricia and Micheál for sharing such wonderful personal insights. And that's really what this is all about. It's making those personal connections. And we're hoping through our mentoring program that those connections will really help people professionally. So I will open the floor to questions. There's a couple of questions coming in here. So they're open really if all of the panelists want to pop your cameras on and your microphones on so you're ready. So just a general, well, a question, we'll start with Patricia, if that's okay. Curious to know if the younger Patricia Power was looking for summer work nowadays, would you consider labouring on a building site or recommending it for others?
Absolutely, of course I would. I always, as I said in my talk there, it was one of the things that really struck me when I was in college. The boys would come back after the summer, they 3 months on the sites, and the inside information that they got into the building and how the building was made, because there's a certain amount you learn technical from drawings, from, you know, from 3D that you learn in college, but it's not like actually walking on the site and seeing how it's been built and seeing how it's been put together. There is no equivalent to that. So I have to say I was jealous of that. So, but at the time I did do the office route because I kind of felt I was going to go the more professional quantity surveying route. So I was happy enough to get the experience I got. But if I could have had the opportunity to work on a building site, because there's roles for everybody. Like I've seen sites recently, and there's girls on sites or their gear, their wheelbarrows, they're moving around. So there's always some role for somebody. And if it's a mix of stuff you have to do, that is incredible experience and will stand to you for the rest of your life. So if you can get it and you can work through it, and if you can hack it, definitely working on sites is an amazing experience.
Great, thanks, Patricia. Another question to whoever would like to take this. What advice would you have for women trying to get ahead in their career post having a family?
I might comment on that initially. I suppose I have, just to say, actually, I came from a house of 4 girls. Okay, there was no boys in my house. There's no construction experience or background within my family. But I would have followed vein with one of my best friends. Her father was a building contractor. Her brother was an engineer. That would have kind of helped me kind of lead me into the construction side of stuff. So, but from my experience, again, I've repeated kind of my family. I now have 4 girls, no boys. My youngest is 6 and my oldest is 13. I have to think about that one. So I've gone through 4 different maternity leaves, and what I would say is, I always say, because I've had other female QSs work with me, you can't plan it, you can't think about it. You know, what's right for you from a personal point of view, you just got to go do it, and you'll work through the different options, and there's always options available. Like, it sounds like, oh my God, I'll be out of work for 6 months. It sounds like a long time. It's not, it actually flies. What I would say is, there's no way of planning it. So you just got to go, if that's what you want from a personal point of view, you've just got to make it happen. And it does happen, things fall into place. That's what I would say. You know, I'm here 4 kids later, working my own practice, and trying to, for me, the worst part is not the maternity leave, it's actually the work-life balance afterwards. It's trying to make sure I'm giving to my work, and it's trying to make sure I'm looking after my family. That's what I find I'm constantly assessing, reevaluating, how do I get it right? You know, that to me, I'm 13 years later and I'm still, one week I get it right and the next week it's a complete disaster. So I wouldn't even concern about the maternity leave. That'll work. Enjoy those 6 months that you get with your baby, because you'll never get it back. So.
Shirley, can I come in there as well? Actually, I don't have a family, so I can't talk from personal experience, but I know from talking to other people that, and you know, Patricia's right, you can't plan it, you have to sort of go with it. But I do think early engagement, you know, with the business that you're working in is a really good idea. And I think, you know, I certainly think more and more going forward now, this is not just a question about maternity cover and flexibility for women. It's about flexibility for everybody. You know, I would like flexibility even though I don't have kids. I'm sure lots of men would like a bit more flexibility to have more time with the kids. So it's that open, honest, transparent conversation at an early stage, you know, to say, okay, this is coming down the tracks. How can we figure it out? You know, and it shows commitment to the business. You know, I mean, it is hard for businesses to deal with maternity cover, but, you know, with engagement and addressing the issue, you know, ignoring it and hoping it'll just all be fine isn't going to work for anybody, you know, and everybody will lose out. So I think that early engagement is probably something people should think about.
Jan, I agree fully with that comment, and it's you know, it's been honest with each other in terms of what's going to work and what's not going to work. And I have a lot of colleagues on the team that are moms, and you know, it does take an understanding, a bit of back and forth. But I think what the last 12 months have shown us is the requirement for great flexibility, and hopefully the environment is much better into the future, that people can work through it. I'm probably one of the few guys who actually took paternity leave. So, you know, I've taken extra long breaks in the summers and different things and juggled that up with the team, but it's kind of flagging it early, being engaged around it. And certainly within our business, we've been able to offer different options, be it around the working week, etc. I think one of the challenges probably particularly in a new homes market, which is our predominant market, is around those market cycles, and those things that change within the workplace or within the environment can happen quite quickly. So if someone was having a child in 2009 or 2010 and the crash happened or come back in COVID, it can change quite quickly. And I think for people transgressing back into the workplace, that can be a challenge for everyone in terms of how you bring them back into the fold and somewhat too. So I think, as ever, it's all about communication.
Yeah, thanks, Ivan, for that, and thanks everybody. And speaking personally as well, having also have 2 younger children, I suppose it's when people ask me, you know, and particularly male leaders ask about how do we better support women, I always ask the question, you know, it goes back to the thing, you have to see it to be it. So some of the behaviors and the flexibility should also be modeled by everybody in an organization. So it's well and good to say you can have flexibility for whatever the reason that you need it. It isn't always obviously family responsibilities. It can be other needs driving it. But it has to be seen that there's a level playing field, that other people are also taking that flexibility, and there isn't this, you know, it can create a divide then in itself, offering the flexibility, because oftentimes it is the women that will be taking that flexibility. So, you know, and then we all have heard about the challenges that comes from, you know, people that are in the office and the kind of collaboration that works, and then people are outside it. So we all, I think, have a responsibility to look at that now when we're going to be facing into more hybrid workplaces, I think, and that challenge is going to be there. But that challenge has always been particularly there for women. It's just that it's going to become more widespread. And I think there's an opportunity now for all leaders to really look and sort of model behaviours that are applicable to everybody, and not just have flexibility as the domain of female professionals. I'll take another question then. So a question for Ivan and Micheál. Who has been your biggest female mentor during your career? For Ivan and Micheál.
Well, to be honest, I'd probably Marion Finnegan, who and I suppose back to that financial crash, we spent a huge amount of time, I suppose, selling Ireland and selling the macro and the details. So I would have learned a huge amount from Marion in a very sort of practical day-to-day way, and so we're still good allies and friends today. And I did mention Johanna. I mean, Johanna was head of risk and had a big function in valuations, and joined the company when it was, you know, at a different point many years ago. So there's been quite a few, but Marion and Johanna for different skill sets and different reasons. But I think the presidency, and for Johanna to go for that when she did, I thought was remarkable. So that's
yeah. From my perspective, Shirley, whoever asked the question, I find that during your career you've come under the influence of various mentors. So obviously I've outlined my mother was a huge influence, not in the Irish mammy kind of way, but in the way I've outlined earlier. As I said, some of my teachers, subsequently some of the lecturers were female. And to bring it right up to date, I mean, Joanna, Claire, yourself, Shirley, I mean, you're huge influences and colleagues and peers. You know, when I'm working with you guys, it's not male, female, but you happen to be female, but you're huge influences on my SCSI career at the minute. So I don't have an overarching female mentor. I just find in life that you tend to move through cycles, and you tend to have different mentors or different peers, colleagues as you approach different stages of life. But certainly right throughout my life, I would not like to name, but quite a few. And Deirdre Carroll would be one. Actually, Patricia, you mentioned, who I went to college with, who was an associate in your practice. Yeah, I've known them for years, just as a friend, but a great influencer as well. But it just happens to be female, but just happened to be working with them. So I don't really differentiate, to be quite honest with you, and that's just the way I am. Yeah.
Keeping the spotlight on yourself, I'm afraid we hold a direct question into you. What can men do to help to achieve equality?
I think we have to be part of the I won't say the movement, because that drives me bananas, the word movement, whether it's the women's movement or sustainability movement. We have to do more in our practices, and it can be hard. Like I'll give you an example. I was trying to recruit last year, and I went to a female recruiting agent, and I asked, have you any surveyors in particular, any female surveyors, and there was none available. But we have to promote in our businesses equality in all the things we've outlined earlier. I can't say a single thing, but I'd love to participate more in this drive, and I think maybe sometimes we can be taken on board more by this equality drive as part of the process. I do sometimes think that we're not brought into it enough, being honest with you, and we'd be well willing to participate in it.
Can I add something there, Shirley, as well? Sorry, one of the things that I think men, and I suppose I'm more aware of it now, given that we're going through some of this mentoring thing, is it's the unconscious bias piece. I think if men can be more aware of that, to be honest, if we can all be more aware of that, I think that would have a very positive influence, particularly in our industry. It's very tricky, but they're very subtle. Like I made reference earlier to the whole woman versus girl thing, how we refer to colleagues, and I've heard it with lots of events and different things and in meetings, when someone's talking about an anonymous third party, and they will almost always say he. Whether it was a he or a she, it doesn't really matter, but they will always use the he reference, and that just sort of re-emphasizes the fact that we think of men in surveying and whatever. So I think some of those subtleties, for all of us, not just for men, but for all of us, probably, could move us on.
Good, thank you. Bernie, a question direct for you. Do you feel like you've had to justify that you do not have a 4-year construction degree to similar age professionals with a 4-year degree?
No was the honest answer. It's never come up. I mean, there is the beauty of quantity surveying is it's as much business as it is takeoff, and you have to be savvy from a commercial point of view as much as you have to be savvy from adding 2 and 2 together. So I definitely flourish in the business end of things, and I suppose I would have missed out on the basics that would have come from a 4-year degree, but it's nothing I haven't taught myself along the way. And to be very honest with you, like I did a 3-year commerce degree, and there's one module throughout it that I actually remember. So an undergraduate degree does not define anybody's career, and I think Patricia's story is testament to that. Is you can move your career in whatever way you want. Unfortunately, most times we do need a piece of paper to get us into the room, but it's becoming less so defined that piece of paper has to be specifically geared at that profession. I think your attitude and your ability to work and your willingness to learn is what's going to get you to where you need to be, as opposed to my degree says 4 years in quantity surveying.
Thank you, Bernie. Patricia, I might put this question to you, because I think you've certainly played a significant part in the answer to this, which is it possible to make the profession more attractive to girls in school? So certainly your profile and being, have to see it to want to be it, it's huge, it's brilliant. But any other avenues, I suppose, to make it more attractive to girls?
I suppose it's a bit of walk the talk, really. And I suppose one of the big feedback I got from Room to Improve was amazing. Like most people said to me, Patricia, nobody knew what a QS was, full stop, whether you were male, female, irrelevant. They actually didn't know the role existed. So people didn't know you could do that job. So I suppose I introduced the QS to the households around Ireland, which was great. And then further from that, I suppose I made the stamp that I'm female and I'm a QS and I'm working in the construction environment here. So it's just getting that out there and getting that across to the schools that this is feasible, it's very practical, and anybody can do it. Throughout my career, somebody commented there's a lot of male mentors between career advice in college and work over the years, but I suppose that's the era I came out in. I came out there was a lot of male leaders. The only female leader I knew at the time was Deirdre Chapman, and as I commented, she was an associate director. That really inspired me and gave me hope. But I never at one stage in my career felt I was being biased or I was being sidetracked because I was female. Ever, and never came across it once, not in an office or not on a building site. I was always treated as equal. I was eager to learn. I was eager to move and adapt. So, and I worked hard. I didn't get here for slacking. I did work hard. I put down my head, but I knew where I was going, you know. So I just think it's getting the information out there to the schools. Like Room to Improve, it's on a lot of that, but it's more marketing and media and how we approach it. Like, I suppose I work with, I'm in the construction industry. I work with a lot of different teams. I call them teams, whether they're architects or engineers and QSs, and we're on a team and we work for clients. Now on that team, a lot of the time I work with a lot of female architects, and that's just, I think they have a higher percentage to the QS. I think it's nearly 60%, 70% are female. And there's nothing more satisfying when I'm on a site or at a site meeting whereby if there's a female QS myself, a female architect, and the very odd time there can be a female engineer. There's nothing more satisfying for me personally to be where I am at a table with female QSs. And more than likely, the builder is a male and it's a he. It's very rare. I haven't come across a female builder where I've said, and I'm talking about small builders that are doing house extensions, refurbs, it's a smaller market, the 500 up to 2 or 3 million, you know, they are generally male. But I suppose I'm gone on a sidetrack here, but I suppose the long and short, it's getting the information out to people that this is doable, it can be done. It's just, I suppose, it's not an obvious career route. It's not a UCD, it's not a Trinity. It is a technical university, Dublin. You do need to research the technical colleges to get the information on where the careers are. So it's getting that to the schools, to the career guidance counsellors at school level, that this can be done and it's very achievable.
Great, thanks a million, Patricia. We're just running out of time now into the last couple of minutes, so I'm just going to put just a comment that came in, and I think it's a nice way to wrap up the panel discussion before I just tell people how to apply to the programme. So an attendee has said, in our drive for inclusion, equality and diversity, the goal for us women is not to denigrate or demote men, but to promote the opportunities that a broader culture and diverse thinking can bring to the table. And I think that's exactly it. Better diversity and a profession that is more representative of the society that it's working with and for can only serve the profession really as a whole. So on that note, I might just thank everybody, all of our speakers and panelists today, for the wonderful insights that you have shared, and really personal, which is absolutely fantastic. And it really shows what this whole programme is all about, is that collaborative relationship and that nature of that sharing and really supporting each other. So thank you very much. I'd like to also take this opportunity to thank the working group that have volunteered their time, as all SCSI members who will get involved are volunteering their really valuable time to assist with putting this programme together. And we pulled it together in a very short amount of time, and I know quite a few of them are on the call today. So just to say thank you very much for all of your help, and then to say really, I suppose, to all potential mentees, applications are now open. This is a pilot project for this year because obviously it's our first time trying it, so we're limiting it to 30 mentees for this year, but dependent on the success of it, we will hope to broaden it out into next year's programme. So there will be training provided for mentors and mentees, and that will be provided in April. And then the learning development programme is 6 modules, and that will be delivered online and in person if we can towards the latter half of the year, dependent on public health advice. So they will be run online across April, May, June, and then September, October, November. And then we'll have an in-person, hopefully, closing event where all mentors and mentees will get to meet together in person, hopefully in December. So all of the details are on our website, scsi.ie. It's in the chat box, the link to the particular page around the mentoring. And just to say to mentees, the closing date is the close of business on Monday, the 22nd of March. So you have 2 weeks to get your expression of interest in, and it's a matching process whereby, so think very carefully in terms of the application where you're setting out the areas that you would like to be mentored in, because the mentors in filling out their expressions of interest also highlighted areas in which they would be happy to provide mentoring. So it'll be a matching process. So just to make sure we get good matches, it's important that everybody fills that out. So with that is it we're just bang on 2 o'clock. So thank you very much for all the participants that were here today. Enjoy the rest of this lovely sunny International Women's Day, and look forward to hopefully seeing some of you on the mentoring programme. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.